Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Mic Drop Podcast. It's your boy Alex Wardu. Follow us on all social media. The links will be in the description down below. You got a special guest in the building. Nicholas, say what's up to the people, bro.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Tell the people what got you into music. Tell them where you're from, and all that, basically.
I was just telling Alex before the show or the podcast. I'm at my parents' house right now. I left because Demetrius, our other engineers, were on one of his projects. So just down here with my son, and I am in my dad's office where I don't know if you can see, but he has loads of guitars and amps, and this is just one of his rooms filled with just instruments. So I've always kind of been into music, like, really early on. I remember my dad like picking up the guitar and singing to us, and he just like, didn't have fear or like inhibition to just be musical. And so my entire life, like, I've just been exposed, and not only like through my dad, but my grandparents, my mom's dad was a lifelong choir singer, and my dad's dad, my other grandpa, is also a lifelong musician, pianist. He went to the very first digital music conference in Australia in like the 70s.
Oh shit!
So like he exposed me like in when I was 8 years old ish, to my very first like studio. So it goes deep. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, born in South San Francisco, San Mateo,
Okay.
and grew up in the Bay.
Okay,
Wound
that's
up,
what's up.
yep, wound up in Sacramento later on in life.
Mm.
But yeah,
How is it? How's the music scene over there in Sacramento? Do you like currently like
I
stay
don't know.
overnight here?
The my you know I work globally, so
Mm.
I'm not. I have a few people that I'm tapped in with here in Sacramento, that are great artists and great musicians. But as for like the scene in general, it's like any other kind of metropolitan area. Like we have our local artists and
Mm.
our like select venues where um, big and medium and small artists go to perform.
Mm.
But I mean, it's a cool city. Like if you go, like if you know anything about like the history of rap, like there was a lot of cool shit recorded in
Mm.
Sacramento, and not necessarily like engineered here or whatever, but we're on the West Coast, so you
Mm.
can imagine like someone's knocking at their front door.
You're good, bro. Go ahead and handle it. That's
Yeah,
what's up.
no, you can imagine a lot of the big names in rap have been through here and made an imprint.
Oh, so you're at your own studio, or like, where'd you say you were again?
No, I'm at my parents' house right now.
Oh, okay, okay. Because when I saw you on Instagram at first, I thought like your actual name was Million Dollar Snare, but I looked into it. It
No,
was like, oh, your
that's the
name's
studio.
Nicholas.
That's the name of the studio,
Yeah, yeah.
and the name of the brand. And it's evolving and it's growing. And at first that was like my handle, but I think like soon I'll disassociate that from me, because we have a few other engineers now, and it's like home to them as well.
Mm.
So I was the one who founded it.
Mm. How many like engineers do you have that work there?
We have three others. So we have Demetrius, who does a lot of assisting, but he's breaking off into his own mastering career. And then we have Kayla, who came highly recommended from one of the colleges over here. I know one of the former professors who like taught the digital music class, and she's amazing. And
Mhm.
then that former professor is actually our Atmos mastering engineer, and he helps a
Mm.
lot with Atmos stuff. And that's Brendan,
Okay.
who's his nickname is the professor because he literally, was a professor teaching audio. And it's cool because he like when there's things that I don't understand about audio, I go to him and I'm like, what is like how do you explain this? And he has like really good theory and technical knowledge. Whereas like I'm really strong into like the practical application of the technical knowledge. So it's a pretty cool partnership.
Okay. Okay. Um, Shit. So like, how many? We'll put it like this. Who are like out of all the artists that you've been able to work with, who are like your top five favorite that you've been able to work with? So I know it's a lot,
I
obviously.
don't I don't like this question because I think it's unfair to all the artists that like hire me.
Mm.
Um, I
Okay.
think like just being real with you, I don't because like I don't even it changes day to day. Like
Okay.
what I'm working on today is like my favorite stuff that I'm working on, if that makes sense. And it's
Mm.
not necessarily an artist, but like it's a sound, and like
Mm.
I think the sound, like my sound is like constantly evolving and like changing and like trying to be cutting edge and like not only with the times but like ahead of the times.
Mhm.
So even like independent artists, like I'll get an independent song and I'll be like, damn, this is like amazing. And if it's not amazing and I send it back after I'd worked on it, um, then I didn't do a good job. So I think it's
Mhm.
like my goal is to like make everything that I hear my favorite, if that makes sense.
Okay. How did you like initially first learn how to like master songs? Did you like kind of teach yourself, or was there someone there to kind of mentor you, or like how did that?
No, I mean I did not take the conventional path, which is assisting someone for 30 years until they die, and then to be able to like master projects. And like honestly, that's not me. Like I don't let anyone kind of dictate my path, right?
Mhm.
So I actually started mastering because I was sending my own productions out. I've been producing since I was 12, around 12 years old, and in my 20s, I started really getting heavily like I went from producing a lot of rap and hip hop based stuff to a lot of electronic music type of stuff, and so I was like creating my own um, productions, and I was always like understood sound design and like I knew how to play the piano and like I could navigate any DAW. Um, I could mix amazing, but when it came to mastering, like I just didn't know. I just didn't understand it. I was always like, "How is everything getting to sound like this? How does it sound so wide and so loud, but like so tight?"
Mhm.
And I would send my mixes off to mastering engineers, and like at the time, I wasn't making a lot of money. I was spending like my whole paycheck getting my albums,
Mhm.
my singles mastered, and I would get it back, and I'd be like, no, it's not like where it needs to be, um, and I would kind of start editing like the mastered files, which is like a big like, you know,
Yeah.
you don't do that, you don't edit the masters, and I
Mhm.
would start like making changes that I thought sounded better. I would be asking for revisions and stuff. People wouldn't respond to me like when I asked for revisions, and I kind of got like a little bit off put with how I was not only being treated by like one mastering engineer, but like I was going across the spectrum of
Mm.
different engineers, and I didn't feel like I was getting like the service level that I thought that my music deserved because I was like charting stuff on Beatport. I don't know if you remember those days in electronic music, but like
Mm.
Beatport was where all the DJs went to go get files for festivals, and you know what I'm
Okay.
saying, like
Okay.
like people topping the charts were like Skrillex and Bass Nectar and all those type of people. And I was charting stuff on there too, and so I felt like my music deserved, to be mastered at the highest levels. And um, it eventually got to a point where it was like, I think I have to do this myself. Like they can't get the sound I want. So I started buying up gear, and like again, just spending all my my entire paychecks like buying up mastering gear and investing in it. And then one day someone asked me, "Hey, can you master this record?" Like I never really thought of like doing it for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what started it.
Okay. Okay. Would you say so like nowadays, would you say you like engineer more than you produce beats? Or like what do you think you do the
Oh
majority of
yeah,
your time?
I don't have any time to produce anymore.
Yeah.
It is 200% like 80 hours a week mastering, uh,
Mm-hmm.
probably right now.
Hmm. Damn.
That's why the 200%. Yeah, it's a lot.
How do you find time for yourself? Like how do you find like time to just, is this like like a everyday type of thing, or is this like, like how do you find time for yourself? I know you said you have
Well,
kids and
so
stuff.
if you yeah, I mean if you break down 80 hours, like it's not across 5 days. It's across like probably 7 days. And like right now, like this week, I'm kind of I've like blocked off some time, just to like not
Yeah.
do anything. And so
Mhm.
I in starting up $1 Million Snare, I definitely did forfeit some time that I used to take to really take care of myself. And I used to run like 25 to 35 miles a week, and
Mm.
uh, just that kind of stuff. And I had kids. I had like just finished, or not finished, but I had finished a major in college. I still dropped out. But I was just going so hard. I was working a 60-hour a week job um, before I like quit to like fully jump into mastering. And I really like wasn't taking care of myself for a couple of years, and just like recently, earlier this year, I started to get back on like, all right, I have to exercise an hour every morning. Like I
Yeah.
have to be up and say hi to my kids and like tuck my kids in at night and that kind of stuff. So despite the workload, I still have a really dynamic schedule. So sometimes I do work 30, 40 hours on the weekend to like get a job done. But then I'll like relax Monday and Tuesday,
Mm.
that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay.
And depending on what the project is and what the artist is like I've been in some insane situations, like a few weeks ago, my best friend was getting married, and we were
Mm.
like delivering, the new Roddy mixtape that just came out. And
Oh, okay.
so I'm like having to balance, like I'm supposed to be the best man at this guy's wedding, but also I'm having to make sure that this
Yeah.
album that's coming out is like the top of the top, level of quality. So
Hmm.
it can get real tricky, but that's why we also um, help. So like Demetrius and Kayla, they help me run. So while I'm doing the main mastering, like they help me with a lot of like getting the clean versions run, and the instrumentals, and just any other things that people ask for.
Hmm.
And they're really diligent with how the recalls are performed because it's analog, So
Hmm.
I do rely on a lot of people for help. I also have my studio manager Ryan, who works for us, and he does a lot of like the behind the scenes, a lot of the stuff you see on social media, that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. So like if I was to like book a session, like what as like one of your clients, like what could I expect like Like, what are some techniques that you use to get the best quality sound as far as like the whole mastering process?
Well, I mean, if it depends on what you send me. So, like, I'm very big on the input. I was sent a mix last week where I still haven't even done the master to it because when I listened to it, I was like, all right, I think your vocals are like way too low. Like, it was like so noticeably low that like when I heard it in the mastering studio, it was like immediate. Like I didn't even have to listen for 5 seconds to know that a change needed to be made before I mastered it. And like I could give them the same experience that I used to get when I sent my stuff to mastering, which is like just get the file and send it back and take the money, you know. But that's not why I got into mastering. I got into it to actually make good music and
Hmm.
to be honest, you know, with people who hire me. Like if you hire me, we're going to be honest with each other, you know. And so I just asked them like, hey, would you mind like send me the instrumental and a cappella separately, and I'll stem master this. That way I can like make sure your vocals are sitting like right where they need to sit.
Hmm.
And so it's been um, sometimes I have to walk people through like, oh, how do I do this export in Ableton, you know?
Hmm.
And I'll like walk them through to like make sure that that's figured out. So by the time it gets to me, I'm giving them the best product back.
Hmm.
And my approach is always different depending on what the input signal is. But
Yeah.
for the most part, like the real input is I listen to your mix first and we fix anything that needs to be fixed before I even master it.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So, if there was, let's just say hypothetically, like there was like a lot of distortion on like my voice, what are some things that you would do to kind of clean that up? Like if I sent you a song and it had like a lot of distortion in my voice, like what would be like the first
Could
things
you
you would
re-record it?
do?
If I get
Yeah.
that option.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends how far the person is willing to go. Like, if it's something that's noticeable, like, hey, you were like you could tell that you recorded with this cardioid mic like facing the wrong direction, like
Mhm.
which has happened before. Um, we'll see if it's possible to re-record them. If it's something like, hey, I lost this laptop and all I have is the MP3, like this is the only recording I have of this song with the beat, then we
Yeah.
can do restoration. Sometimes, depending on the track, like depending on what it is, um, we'll charge a little bit more because like restoration is a process in itself, and like I'll go splice by splice, like object by object in the wave to like do adjustments on every piece of distortion to like kind of clean it up. And
Okay.
we still can't clean everything up. We can do a lot with the tools that are out there today. Like Isotope has a really great
Mhm.
tools in their Isotope RX Advanced um, bundle, and then Sequoia, the Magic Sequoia, the software that I use to master, has a lot of great internal RX tools as well. So as well as like spectral editors where you can go in and like see the distortion in the spectrum and like kind of remove it.
Mm.
But again, like that stuff is like very tedious. Um, and we have to be very meticulous to like get that, you know,
Yeah.
product delivered back sounding listenable.
Hmm. Hmm. What would you say is like your favorite DAW to use?
For mastering, it's Sequoia.
Sequoia. Okay.
Yeah.
I never heard of Sequoia before. So is that like the main DAW that people use for mastering? You think?
There are quite a few mastering engineers who use Sequoia. I
Mm.
I think Sterling uses Sequoia. I'm pretty sure the Mastering Palace uses Sequoia. A handful of other engineers. Some people don't like it. I really like it because I can splice a millisecond of audio and
Mm,
apply the 7 VSTs just to that millisecond. So
damn.
it's only, yeah, so you have a little mixer on every, not only on the track, but on every splice of audio, you have a mixer as well. That's, yeah, that gets processed before the VSTs that are applied to the track or the
Damn.
instrument.
Oh, that's crazy. I never heard of that before.
Yeah,
No,
it
that's actually
gets
interesting.
really, mastering engineers are um, like the jazz musicians of like the engineering community. Like it's just way too extra, you know. Like we get real into shit that no one else cares about. I feel like
Yeah.
just
No,
like
I feel. Do you feel like mastering is kind of like undervalued, or like?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can. So there's one of my closest friends who's a mixer did this mix and they sent the mix off to it was a big artist, it was a big producer, and they sent the mix off to the producer, and the producer was like, I'm hearing this here and I'm hearing this here and I heard a click here and like the bass just like isn't right, and like it was a long list of notes, and he was like, hey, can you just do a master on this real fast? And like so I did a master on it, and it was like a really tough master. Like when I
Mm,
did the when I heard the mix, I was like, oh wow, this like, you know, it needed a lot of work. I didn't know that like he had gotten these notes prior to me mastering it, but I sent him back the master, and he's like, yeah, you sent this long list of notes, and I feel like you could fix all this. You would be fixing all this stuff in the master. Um, and so what he did was he sent the master back to the producer, and the producer was like, "Oh, perfect, everything's fixed in the mix." And like he didn't realize that like all that had happened was it got mastered, which to me it was like it felt really good because it it showed it proves how important mastering is, right? Because
mm,
I'm listening to this record for the first time, and usually on my first listen is when I know what changes need to be made or where it needs to be taken. Because I'm like an audience member that's like seeing something unfinished for the first time, and it's like, oh, all right. My first listen is telling me this needs to be here and this needs to be here. There's a click right there. There's a buzz over here. There's like some hiss at the very intro from like
mm.
how they recorded the guitar that I'm going to remove, and I'll send it back after making those decisions off first listen. And it's almost like the mixer doesn't have to do as much work
Mm.
in that case.
Damn, damn, Sequoia. That's crazy.
Go ahead. Yeah, it is a tool. I mean, it's all how you use it.
Okay, okay. Um, shit. How did you like? How are you able to get the placement with Roddy Ricch and like his first album, the Antisocial album? How are you able to get that?
So I had been working. So I had like started mastering right in 2016, and in 2017, one of my friends hit me up, and he was assisting Mix by Ali, and he was like, "Hey, we need this master done. It's for Kendrick Lamar, the Heart Part 4. We
Mm,
need it done like tonight. Like no one else can do it." And he was like, "Can you do it?" And literally, it was like a clock. I was at work. I had this shift where I worked until 2 a.m.
mm,
and I had a team of 50 people that I was managing, and so I like fucking left work. I was like, "Oh shit, I got to go do this," I had like someone else like cover. It's not. It wasn't an easy thing to do to like escape that situation, because it's like, oh shit, I have to. I'm
yeah.
responsible for 50 people, right? Like, how do you
Hmm.
just be like, all right, you guys figure it out, right? It didn't work like that, so I like got that covered, and I left, and I worked all night, like just on this one master. I was sending things back and forth. They were sending me new mixes. Um, And like by 9 a.m. in the morning, they're finally like, all right, it's approved, it's coming out, you know. And that was the very first, like, that was like the biggest thing I'd ever done. It was like super highly anticipated record. It was the record that like preceded Damn, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had asked me like, hey, like, would you be willing to like come to LA to like see if you could try to do this album? And like it didn't work out. Like nothing was like working out. But like fast forward 3 years later, 2 years later in 2019, they had another album for me, and they're like, hey, can you see if you could master this album? And I had been like working with them. I did like a couple EPs for them, and the label was like shooting me out with like other mastering engineers, right? Like people that I like idolized. And the artists and the engineers were like choosing my masters, and I was like, oh shit, like maybe I could do this. So they sent me Summer Walker's album, her first album, and that album did amazing. It was like, um, the only reason it didn't go number one is because this K-pop group like sold a bunch of merch, and it like,
Was it
yeah,
BTS?
no, it was I don't even remember the name. You can look it up though, because Billboard changed how they counted album sales after that fiasco, because Summer Walker should have gotten.
What year was that? 2019?
Yeah, 2019. Summer Walker should have gotten that number one. She got like number two on the Billboard chart. And so that's like spawned this relationship where they're like, all right, like we're gonna send you this Roddy, like you gotta like check out this Roddy. And they just told me like get the best sound, like get the best sound, just get the best sound. And I was like sitting in there and I'm like, you know, like all right, I could get the best sound, you know. And they shot me out with, you know, other engineers, and them and Roddy picked my masters. And so it like,
Damn.
I know. And so for me, it was like,
How did that make you feel when you finally like realized that? Did like what was the emotions going? That's a pretty big. It's a diamond record, you know.
yeah, well, I didn't know that the record, I didn't know that that album or that record was going to do what it was going to do. You know, I just tried to get it to sound the best. Like I just listened to the, hey, can just get this to sound as best as it can.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was going to do. I didn't even know, like, I'd heard Racks in the Middle, you know, but it wasn't like, I didn't realize like how big it was going to be at the time. And so it just felt like, all right, cool. Like, yeah, I could do this. I could probably do this for a living, you know, if they're, because it kept happening like that, where like they were shooting me out. There's engineers and labels shooting me out against other engineers, and they would pick my shit. And I was like, okay, I could probably do this. And all the people they were shooting me out with like had mentors, like you talked about earlier. Like they had a conventional path, and my path was not conventional. Like I learned sound design. I taught myself how to mix. I read every single book there was on mixing and mastering that I could find. When I was learning, like YouTube wasn't even like super popping off. Like now there's a bunch of tutorials on YouTube and TikTok, including my own, where I was just like drinking from a fire hose, like all this information coming in, and I would like take a little bit of it at a time and apply it. And I started getting really good at, like I was saying earlier, like the practical application of the things I was learning. And in engineering, like there are boundaries and there are like technical limits, right? Like I couldn't deliver a file that was like clipping, you know, by 10 dB without like some noticeable shit happening when it got like uploaded to Spotify, right? So there are guidelines for how things need to be delivered, but there's 1,000 ways to get to the destination, if that makes sense. Like just because one mastering house had done it one way for 60 years doesn't mean I have to do it that way to achieve the best sound.
Mm-hmm.
So I was using, like, there are no rules. I was using whatever I could to get the sound that I needed to achieve.
Okay. Okay. Um, I know, like, from my personal experiences, like, even with me being an artist, like, I noticed that a lot of people that like to master things, they have the thing where when they send out masters, it's like something with true zero. I don't know if you're aware of that. Like,
Yeah, True Peak.
yeah. Do you kind of try to, like, what do you do to kind of like make sure it doesn't sound distorted? Because I've always had that problem when I make music, like my voice gets like distorted in the mastering process when I like send it to DSPs and stuff. So, um, what kind of techniques do you use?
I think you're, what's the word for it? Confounding two different things. So True Peak is a measure of peak the once the signal gets turned from digital to analog. So like
Mm,
everything, like we can't hear ones and zeros, right? So like everything that's being played back to us is analog. Like our ears hear in analog. So when True Peak, a True Peak measurement is a recording that doesn't clip once it's being played back on an analog system. I could go over True Peak in the mastering studio and not hear any distortion because um, I have a powerful enough system to like be able to handle those overages. But for instance, if I were to go over True Peak and play a file back on my phone, which has a shitty amplifier and smaller shitty speakers, I might start to hear distortions in places during the analog conversion that I wasn't able to hear in the studio. And so that's like why I try to stay below the True Peak of zero, because that's a that's like a system playback problem. Like I can play it across multiple systems and it's going to sound different if I go over True Peak.
mm,
Now, what you're talking about is transcoding. So if I upload a file to Spotify, and for instance, like I deliver waves, if I deliver a wave and Spotify transcodes it to Ogg Vorbis, which it does, there's a
mhm.
likelihood, depending on what ceiling I have the digital zero at, that there will be artifacts generated. Um, you
Okay.
can you can create those artifacts based on how loud your digital zero is as well. So
Mm,
transcoding is like playback across streaming platforms, and
mm.
True Peak is like a translation problem for playback across different speaker systems and headphones and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes
There's no great way to there's no like real true way to figure out like what's going to happen, but there are tools out there like the isotope. I forgot what it's called. It's the isotope thing that lets you see how things play back in like in AAC format and MP3 format, and like if you change the
mm,
bit rates down to like 128 and such, you can get real close to how things play back on Spotify, so you can see
mm.
how how it's being transcoded and like what the distortions are, as well as like I think it lets you solo the distortion, so you could hear like it'll be like
Oh,
and
okay.
there'll be like some added noise to the
So it
file.
isolates the distortion so you could properly hear it, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
um I don't use that stuff often anymore because I know what's about to happen most of the times.
mhm,
Some of the decisions we make in mastering are like, all right,
mm,
how much distortion am I okay with, because there's no way to get rid of all of it.
mm.
um it's just like kind of up to us to make it sound musical. like a distorted guitar. Like there's a
Mm.
way to make it sound musical. Like if you overdrive it too much, um,
Yeah.
you're going to lose some harmonics and things that are pleasant sounding. And it's the same thing with like transcoding. Like if you have things that are way too wide and like you're kind of clipping over zero and that type of shit,
Hmm.
you could be creating some artifacts that you don't necessarily want.
Right.
It's
Right.
like compromising, finding the middle ground. Like where's the best place to deliver this particular master so that not only does it sound great on Tidal and Apple Music, but Spotify and DatPiff or wherever.
I haven't heard that piff in a long time, bro.
Hey, some people like some people ask me like, "Hey, I need the MP3 for DatPiff. Like, it only accepts MP3s. Like, they want it to be low-fi.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
It's like
cool. That's cool.
The SoundCloud era. Like, there's a
Yeah.
sound that came out of that era, um, that's still impacting the way records sound today.
Hmm. Yeah.
They
Definitely.
want it to be dirty, lo-fi, distorted. Like sometimes that's what they're going for.
Hmm. I agree. I agree. What are some like pet peeves that you have as far as like mastering when it comes to working with people? Like, what are some like things that really irritate you?
Um, I mean, I try to stay in like an attitude of gratitude because not a lot of people like get to do what they love to do for a living. So like even with the minor inconveniences, like I still am able to. I'm really doing what I love to do. So
Hmm.
uh, try not to like stay in a negative space. But like a pet peeve I have is when sometimes when people like send me notes back, like they're just kind of disrespectful, you know. Um,
Is it
and
the fact that they're sending notes or just how they like what they say when they send the notes?
both, it's like I want to be as helpful as possible, and like I'm like here to be of service, to the people
Mhm.
that hire me to do their mastering. Um, but sometimes like and maybe sometimes it's like a lost in translation thing because sometimes the notes are from other countries and stuff, and maybe they're using Google Translate, so it comes off real harsh.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get stuff that's just like, damn, like that's like super harsh. A lot of the times, what they're asking me for are changes that like need to be made in the mix,
Mm.
and so for me, like that's one of the harder ones where it's like, all right, like I can't tune this vocal to a C sharp for you. Like it's gonna be you have to do. I can't do it with the stereo wave.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's true. That's true. What so for like an upcoming engineer or producer, like I like to ask people this question. Um, what do you think is like the most effective way to get like big name placements in your opinion?
Focus on getting the best sound with the people that no one knows right now.
Mm.
Because I mean, in 2019, like barely anyone knew Roddy. You know,
Mhm.
not barely anyone, but like as
Yeah.
far as like a mainstream name goes, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
he wasn't mainstream in 2020. Um, Baby Keem, the mainstream name. Now he's mainstream.
Mhm.
2021, no one had ever heard of Money Long, and all of a sudden, boom, out of
Interesting.
nowhere. So it's like people think that I'm working with big artists, but I'm not working with big artists. I'm working with artists that have yet to make a name for themselves, and I'm helping them like get there. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah. And so that's
That
why that's why I fuck with what you do, bro. Because you've worked with a lot of like up and coming artists. Like I know you think you've worked with OGZ. I fuck with him
oh
too.
Jeezy, he's fucking on the way. He's on the way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and he's from Cali, so I'm definitely tapped in for sure.
Yeah, and if you've seen how his tour did, like it was every single show sold out, like all across America, Canada, like crazy shit. His fans are insane,
Mm-hmm.
and even like, I mean, the the um, the numbers are up there with like how his like mixtape and album have done. Um, but like that's not everywhere you make money as an artist, you know, and that like for some artists that's like not even 10% of where their money is coming from. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that's like for up and coming artists, like don't worry about getting the big names. Like those, that sound is already there. That's already been established. Like our
Mm-hmm.
job, like my job as a new engineer, or like a modern or cutting edge engineer, is to get a new sound, a sound that everyone else is chasing. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would suggest to up and coming engineers.
Mm-hmm.
Find a sound that everybody else wants to chase. They're like, how the fuck did he get that? How did
Yeah.
they get that?
Yeah. Fucking start the wave. Don't ride the wave. Feel me? Um.
I think that's a great point too. It's like with producers as well. Like I think a lot of people. I had this conversation earlier with Prizzy, and he was talking about how producers hit him up and ask like, "Hey, how do I get placements with so and so? How do I get a beat placed here?" And he had the same advice. It was like, "Don't worry about getting some shit placed with Kendrick. Like that's not going to happen. Like you're not his production crew. And if you look at his producers, it's been pretty consistent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
so you want to find a new artist and be consistent with the new artist to the top.
Facts. Facts. Yeah. Like it's a lot of West Coast artists that are coming up. Like I still fuck with Absol. Like Absol's hard. You got like West Side Boogie. Roddy. Obviously, it's Roddy. It's just the West Coast is still he's still here. So I fuck with them. I saw a stat on like your website. I don't know if this is still true, but it said like from November 2021, like 5% of like all the songs mastered or like were mastered by you. Is that still true to this day? Because it's like it was literally like last November.
Yeah, not this year. I think we're a little bit lower, but then there's like
Mm,
definitely there's some stuff that's impacted that, right? So like Atmos is huge,
mm,
especially in Apple Music, right? And so that changed how things are being heard and how they chart
mhm,
on Apple Music. And so previously, like before 2022, basically everything you heard on Apple was stereo.
mhm,
So when something was played back, it was played back in stereo. Well, we haven't done, all the Atmos for everything that's out there. So, and most Apple Music users, I think the metric is like somewhere over 70% have Atmos defaulted on. So it's really hard to tell like whether or not I'm impacting Apple Music anymore in stereo with all of their user base being in Atmos, right? So like I could do a
yeah.
great master in stereo and it almost like gets discarded on that platform if we don't do the Atmos.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, the landscape is changing a lot, but still like we're doing um, again like very impactful records year over year, and again with artists that are being nominated for Grammys. Like Money Long just got nominated for 3 Grammys off a
mhm,
song that was independent, you know. So
mhm.
sometimes the impact isn't necessarily like even when songs don't chart, like they can still be super impactful. But yeah,
Yeah.
crazy for the bill. I think if you look at the Billboard 200, it's still probably around 5%.
Mm, that's crazy. That's crazy, bro. When I saw that stat, I was like, damn, like it's crazy. Um,
Yeah, there's a
okay.
few. I mean, there's a few engineers who have like a stat like that.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
yeah, mastering is real.
Mm.
It's been the same people for a long time, so we're trying to disrupt that a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Who are some of like your favorite mastering engineers that you personally know that you fuck with?
Well, one I'll highlight that's just way, actually I'll highlight two. So if you look through just the shit that I love to listen to for its like sonic quality, there's two names that have like come up throughout just history of recorded music for me, and that's Bob Ludwig and Brian Gardner. And a lot of people know Brian Gardner from like that story of the Chronic 2001, where like Dr. Dre couldn't. He was like kept sending it to mastering. They weren't getting it loud enough. Like the bass wasn't right, and they finally sent it to Brian, and he got it right. So he's like really well known for the Chronic 2001. But did you know he did fucking Sublime too? So for me, that range of like,
Whoa.
yeah, I know every song on the Chronic 2001, and I know every song on that Sublime CD. You know, the one with the sun and shit,
Yeah,
the white one? Like that range right there was like, holy shit, like
that's
insane.
fucking crazy.
Um, and then Bob Ludwig as well. He did a lot of like 90s like pop rock, as well as like, you know, um, just shit that you used to hear on the radio all the time. Like if you just like search Bob Ludwig in title and go through his catalog, like most popular, like you just everything is just sonically
Mm,
insane.
mm.
So those guys definitely.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Tom
Shout out to them.
Coyne, Tom Coyne, R.I.P.
Okay. Rest in
One of the
peace.
founders of Sterling. He's super well known for his work throughout history, and probably his latest stuff before his passing. Bruno Mars. That whole 24K Magic. That was what the album was called, right? Yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
I think so.
Um, Sonically, just like
Damn.
incredible. And if you could download those masters off HD tracks, and I've analyzed all of them. He's one of the most, even though like he obviously hasn't been able to do work in recent years. Um, he's probably the father of like streaming mastering. Like if you look at his specs in the masters, uh,
Hmm.
those three I have just a ton of respect for.
Mm. Okay. Yep. Shout out to them. Um, I guess my last question is, damn, like what can we expect from you? Like what can we expect from $1 Million Snare? Just musically, where do you see yourself like a year from now?
Well, I'm really focused on developing my team. I don't want to selfishly like be the one at the head of the starship. 'Cause
Hmm.
studio's kind of like a spaceship. I want other people to like get their shots early on, as well as like I feel like mastering in general has been a really homogenous type, like not very like diverse ecosystem of people. And like $1 Million Snare, we're trying to like bring some diversity to the table,
Hmm.
and like not only with like different ethnicities and are really focusing in on our female engineer, but like as an age thing as well. Like I
Hmm.
don't think that you need to have a 60-year-old person mastering a record, that goes home and listens to whatever Pink Floyd. Like that's not me. Like I don't go home and listen to classic rock. Like I go home and I listen to the same shit I was just in the studio listening to,
Yeah.
which is good. Like we need people who are part of the culture, like influencing the
Hmm.
culture, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Um, So the team, I'm really big on the team. I want to get out of the way a little bit more and really let other people shine and not be like, the one. Also, I do want to get more into the tech side. So like building plugins and building platforms and services that may be useful to artists, producers, musicians, engineers in the future. And I can't really like speak on what that looks like right now, just because I don't want people stealing my ideas. But yeah, I just want to be able to provide services that are like that $1 million snare standard, um, that help people out.
Facts. And that's a catchy ass name to have, $1 million snare. Like, I thought that was your name the entire time. I was like, is that his name? I was like, nah, I did
Yeah,
research.
I had a digital music professor when I was at community college that said that one day. Like I had my headphones on the whole semester and I was just making beats the whole time. I didn't listen to one word that guy said. And one day I had my headphones and he's like, "Oh, this is how you get that $1 million snare." And I was like, "Oh shit, $1 million snare. That's fucking pretty tight name." And I put
Yeah.
my headphones back on and 13 years later or whatever, that was the name of the studio.
Nah, that's a catchy
I don't
name.
even know the professor's name. That's fucked up. But
That's a catchy name, man. Hey, man, appreciate you coming on. I know you're a busy guy, obviously. But yeah, let the people know where to find you, Instagram, all
$1 million
that.
snare everywhere. $1millionsnare.com, $1 million snare on Instagram, TikTok, all that.
Okay. Okay. No problem. Again, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. And
Yeah,
if you
thank
want to
you.
come back on, whenever you're less busy, you're always welcome, bro.
Yeah,
Always welcome.
I appreciate you having me out.